Hello everybody, this is ManuS coming back at you with more Legends of Runeterra spoilers. As promised, I will catch up on the last two spoiler batches in this video because they were both pretty short and we actually didn't even get a champion in the second one, unlike what I potentially expected. So not sure how this is gonna play out. It seems like they're throwing off the standard route of batch of cards from the region, couple more cards of the region plus the new champion sort of formula for some things here, maybe because of the size of the format of the expansion, and the expansion probably being a bit lighter on champions relative to the rest of the cards, and introducing cards for regions that already have gotten their champion and stuff like that. So we'll just see how the stuff comes out and deal with it then. So you know the drill. Before we dive into it, hit the subscribe button down below if you haven't yet to not miss out on future content. And now we'll tackle the latest spoiler batch. Alright, so first off we have a new landmark. This is a Freljord one, the Howling Abyss, and as it has been promoted, this sort of all random, all mid, the ARM side. At round start you create and hand a random level 2 champion that's not in your hand, deck or play. So basically it gives you a huge variety of champions that are already leveled up, which is in a way kind of interesting because some champions are kind of hard to level up and really powerful when they're leveled up. Stuff like Jinx, for example, just basically getting a 5/4 quick attack that draws you 2 cards each turn without needing to ever empty your hand once to get there and stuff is super powerful in basically any deck, stuff like that. And then obviously they are also a lot better because they have the stat buffs usually from leveling up and so on. So this creates a lot of power potential, but you have to keep in mind it's a 7 cost landmark, so you can't play this before turn 7 or earlier with ramp, but you can't play it earlier with spell mana. It doesn't have any board impact when you play it, and it takes a whole turn to give you the first result, and then you're required to invest even more mana into the champion that you got. So it's really, really slow. So not sure how competitive it's going to be. It might be that this is more aimed at sort of the casual players because it's a really flashy and kind of sort of cool landmark for casual players to have cool moments with and mess around with. Although, however, if this turns out good enough for competitive play, it could actually be really, really powerful, and we'll have to see how it pans out. But yeah, it's definitely kind of an extreme direction. Not sure how to feel about the card. I really honestly hope it's not good enough for competitive play, because I think if it is, it's going to be a pretty annoying and kind of frustrating card to have to play against, because there's a lot of variance involved and some really crazy high roll stuff, and it's also sort of infinite value long term. So if you can't answer this and can't win before this takes over, it will basically just bury you in free champion bombs and stuff like that. It's a very Hearthstone-y card, which has also been a bunch of the criticism that has come when this card was revealed. So we'll have to see how it goes. I'm not sure how I feel about the card. I'm not too happy about it, or at least rather I hope it's not particularly relevant to competitive play, so we don't have to deal with the impact it has on the game. But if it will show up in competitive play, it's a card that's probably gonna make a fair share of people unhappy, possibly myself included. So I don't know. How do you feel about it? Let me know in the comments down below. This is certainly a pretty big and divisive card, and we just kind of have to hope that 7 mana, no board impact, a whole turn till you get anything out of it is not good enough, even with ramp in a region like that. But it could also turn out to be the new big sort of ramp payoff option. Anyway, on to the next card. Next we have another ramp tool, also Freljord card, Voices of the Old Ones. It's an 8 cost burst card. You get 2 empty mana gems, so it's kind of a bit like a Nourish in Hearthstone in that sense, although it's obviously notably more expensive, but it is burst, and it also has additional value added to it, since you basically get both halves of Nourish in a way, because for the top 4 cards in your deck, you draw each card that costs 8+, then shuffle the rest into your deck. So to be fair, in a in a ramp deck like this, realistically, you're probably looking at like on average less than one card, or maybe like one card that you draw. But even then, like basically drawing a card and ramping twice isn't too bad. And since this is a spell, so you can use spell mana, the 2 mana gems can still do a lot for you, because you can, for example, play this on turn 5 or like on 5 mana with 3 spell mana, ramping you all the way to 8 the next turn. That's also, like, as you can see, what it's intended for, to go from like 5 to 8, to drop the 8 cost card that you're drawing with this, like for example a Mind Splitter or a Aurelion Soul, stuff like that. So yeah, it's a kind of a power ramp card that makes the ramp decks lead more into ramping, and kind of be like super dedicated hyper ramp decks, ramping into big Mind Splitters and Aurelion Souls more so than right now already. Not sure if that was necessary, and even how competitively viable the card will be once again. Once again, 8 mana is a lot of investment, but you're also getting something out of it, so I'll probably expect this to at least see experimentation and potentially even make it into decks in some number. Maybe not as a 3-of, maybe like as a 2-of or something. But I could also see it being a bit too slow and too big of an investment. Because also there is diminishing returns to ramp in a game like Runeterra, where you get a free mana every turn. So past a certain point where you draw this, it's not going to be very good. And then 8 mana drawing you like potentially less than 1 card on average is not very good, because how many 8 cost cards can you put in your deck? Like maybe you have like 9, so that's like 9 in 40. Giving you like 0.9 cards roughly drawn from this. If you have a bit more, obviously it gets higher than that. But yeah, with like a realistic deck of something like 3 Aurelion Souls, 3 Mind Splitter, and 3 Voices of the Old Ones, you're looking at less than 1 card drawn from this on average. And the number obviously goes down if you disproportionately have already drawn 8 cost cards relative to the amount of cards you have. So there are like low roll potentials, but there's obviously like high roll potential to an extent in the other direction. But yeah, not sure if it's actually going to be good enough to see play, especially in larger numbers, but it opens up some interesting like more hyper ramp stuff, at least in meta games where there isn't a lot of aggression, a lot of early pressure. This can get out of hand really fast, because if you have the time, this card seems really powerful. If you're just racing to your end game, the one that's ramping harder than your opponent is getting there first and has a huge advantage. But yeah, like I said, there's diminishing returns to ramp in a game where you get free mana every turn. So past a certain point, if you have too much ramp, you're going to draw too many cards that don't do a whole lot, and people already playing a whole lot of ramp currently, potentially in these decks, if they play Faces of the Old Ones, Withering Stones, and Catalyst, that's like 9 ramp cards. So if this would see play, it would probably be over one of the other ramp cards, maybe over Catalyst, maybe over Faces of the Old Ones, not sure. But yeah, another like highly speculative card that is a bit hard to judge without seeing what the metagame in the format looks like. Next we have Sneaky Zeebles. This is kind of a neat card. It's a Targon elusive. We haven't had a whole lot of Targon elusives. I think there's only the conditional like Nightfall 2-drop and like the temporary Cygnus. This is a real elusive, so we get a 5-cost 3/3 elusive, which is a bit overcosted, but on play we get to stun enemies with 2 or less power, making this kind of a nice defensive tool against more aggressive decks, which is probably what it's aimed at. Although it's a bit weird, like 3/3 elusive stats are weird and not particularly defensive, while the ability is quite defensive. So it's a bit of a weird sort of identity on the card, I think. But maybe it'll see some play. Not sure. I think it has a bit of an identity crisis, as I mentioned, because elusives are obviously at best at being offensive. The ability is weirdly defensive, but maybe, I don't know, maybe it has some room in some Ionia Targon elusive direction as sort of a way to help win races where sort of both parts kind of come in handy. although there's always the problem that there is already Protector on 5 and even Blessing of Targon. So once again, a bit of a slot issue, but it has some interesting utility that maybe will make it see some play, but right now I'm skeptical because it has this weird identity crisis going on. Next we have Crystal Ibex, or Ibex. It's a 4-cost 4/4 that when you play it grants an ally Overwhelm. Kind of a strange card, honestly. 4-cost 4/4s are pretty solid if what they bring in addition is worthwhile. I kind of doubt that giving an ally Overwhelm is big enough of a deal, especially on curve. It's not going to be very good, like the Overwhelm part. So if you want to play it on turn 4 as a 4/4 where it has the most impact, the playability seems super marginal. Like, it has some neat utility, obviously, with Lee Sin. That's like the one thing that kind of comes to mind, like Lee Sin / Zed Ionia Targon, but we already have a good tool there for the Overwhelm, I think, and I'm not sure if the deck would, like, I doubt the deck would want another 4-drop, especially like just a random unit just to give Overwhelm to its units. It's kind of like, yeah, I mean, I guess it's better in the deck than Fey Guide would be, because it's a bit worse on Zed than Fey Guide, but Fey Guide doesn't do a whole lot for Lee Sin, so it's much better on Lee Sin and still decent on Zed, but I feel like it's not really what the deck needs or wants, and outside of that I don't see the ability mattering much. So yeah, kind of a weird version, especially given that we have the 4-cost Dragon with Fury 4/4, which is notably better as a 4-drop in general. So yeah, this seems like kind of a dud. Next we have another landmark, this time a Targon one and a super cheap one. It's called Starspring. At round end you heal damage allies 1, then once I've seen you heal 22 plus damage from allies, win the game. So it's kind of like a sort of defensive stall deck kind of win condition that also helps you with the stalling part. Yeah, I don't know, it's certainly kind of an interesting build around, but it's really hard to judge how viable it's going to be, both between like people having answers to landmarks and this taking a lot of time, so giving them like tons of time to deal with it, so it seems unreliable as a primary win condition. Also, it is seen, so you really have to have it in play for a lot of healing for a long time, and you got to survive, so by that time you probably can just win in different ways. So maybe it will just primarily end up, if it sees play, seeing play as sort of defensive utility for the healing aspect, and usually not do much on the like winning the game front, but maybe is giving you the chance to sometimes randomly high roll a win off of it in weird stall games. But yeah, the card is kind of strange, and once again I keep saying that, but I think this is a really hard one to evaluate in a vacuum. But I mean, it's cheap, and healing damage, healing all allies by 1 each turn can be really annoying and can make boards really, really sticky. So there's certainly some potential for it to have some impact in Constructed. We'll have to wait and see. Next we have Spring Gifts. This is just a token card from the next card that we'll look at in a moment. It's a 1-cost slow spell that fully heals an ally. And you get this from Spring Guardian, who's a 3-cost 3/3. By the way, I want to apologize for the poor resolution of the images. I really wish we would get like high resolution assets of the new cards that are being spoiled alongside the videos, so we can use them for like review videos. It's kind of unfortunate that a big company like Riot Games doesn't just tweet out or post the high resolution artworks of the cards they are spoiling alongside the video, so we have to take like poor screenshots from said videos. But oh well. So yeah, Spring Guardian, 3-cost 3/3, and when he's summoned you create a Spring Gifts in hand. Obviously the body is a bit underpowered, but first of all there's a lot to be said about getting free cards, so you can turn them into more impactful cards if you want to. It's also a free spell once again for the Lee Sin deck, so this could actually be a reasonable option for the Lee Sin deck, because it also heals back up your Lee Sin and stuff, but it might not be good enough there because most of your stuff is actually pretty low health, and so there isn't a whole lot to heal up, despite this being sort of a free spell to help your Lee Sin and your Eye of the Dragon. But it's certainly a solid and interesting card that I could totally see showing up somewhere. It's a bit comparable to Kindly Tavern Keeper, probably a bit worse, but not a whole lot, since you get a free card out of it, and you can fully heal a unit past just healing 3, which can matter again with like bigger units in your deck. But overall, maybe it's like not quite as good as Tavern Keeper, but Tavern Keeper is pretty good these days, so I could totally see this seeing play in the right kinds of decks alongside something like Soraka, depending on how she's gonna look. Maybe we'll get Soraka today, I'm not sure. And last but not least, we have Divergent Path. It's a 3-cost fast spell that either draws you a landmark or destroys a landmark. So another landmark answer, but also most notably, it's a landmark tutor, making it a lot easier to play decks that are built around landmarks, like the ones we've seen before, like for example the all random, all mid landmark in a like Targon, Freljord ramp deck, that sort of stuff, and at the same time provides you provides you with a powerful mirror tool to answer opposing landmarks. But yeah, the whole landmark thing is kind of hard to evaluate because we don't know exactly how answerable they'll be and how they sort of fit in because they are a new card type. But and maybe there will be more cards that are able to deal with landmarks past the 2 they already announced that will get an errata. So yeah, but yeah, this seems like a pretty solid, flexible card if there's a deck that is built around a landmark to have ways to deal with opposing landmarks as well as reliably have your like key landmark that your deck is potentially built around. So certainly a solid card that is probably going to see play in some number, at least probably as like a one-off in the right decks, given there are landmarks in the metagame at least. Alright, that sums up the last 2 spoiler batches. They were pretty small and actually kind of uneventful. Like the last one was even only technically 3 cards. It was just Starspring, Spring Guardian, and Divergent Path. So pretty small badges. I guess they're spreading it out a bit to fill the time till release. And I would guess we get a couple more Targon cards today and Soraka finally. But we'll know later today. Until then, as usual, let me know in the comments how you feel about the new cards and what you think of my assessment of them. Let's have a discussion about the new stuff coming up and get hyped for some fresh new cards to shake things up and the first competitive in-client end of season tournament next ranked season and all the cool new stuff. And the game is really coming into itself and I'm excited for the future. Alright, that's it again for this time. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to hit the like button down below on your way out and subscribe and turn on notification icon to not miss out on future content. All further information can be found in the description down below by clicking show more, how to support the channel, where to find me live streaming and so on and so forth. Alright, that's it again for this time. I'm your host ManuS. I thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!